All right, we are now recording, and the last thing I need to do is we've got several people who are going to be attending through our Facebook page. Share to your page, which is the Mandino page. Definitely take an opportunity to be able to get on there and participate. Like we share a lot of great content on there, and that's where you also get a lot of updates for events like this. So bear with me just 2 seconds before we get started, because it's going to pop up an extra window for me, and it's going to create an echo for just a second. And as soon as I can mute that, just like that. Just 2 seconds before we get started, because it's going to. And let me get that muted as soon as it lets me pop that up. There we go. Now we are all ready to go. Excellent. My name is Paul Blanchard. I am the president of the Mandino Leadership Institute, and I am super excited to be with all of you this morning. We've got a lot of information to get to. We don't have a lot of nuance or introduction, a lot of backstory, because we're here for the Habit Finder Masterclass. We want to jump right into the Habit Finder. And so without further ado, I want to introduce you to the creator of the Habit Finder, who is the founder of the Mandino Leadership Institute, who is the reason I moved my family all the way back across the country, because I have watched a front row seat as this person's son, as this person's pupil, and now as this person's business partner. It is such an honor for me to get an opportunity to introduce you all to the creator of the Habit Finder, my father, my business partner, Mr. Dave Blanchard. Are you ready to go, Dad?
I'm ready, Paul. Let's take this on. First of all, thank you for that introduction. And for all of you who don't know, Paul used to be the director of admissions for the Jack Welch Management Institute, their executive MBA program. It wasn't easy to get him to come back, but his qualification was, am I coming back to work for you or work with you? And I said, work with me, because he cut his teeth on these principles. And what a tremendous asset to the Mandino Leadership Institute. He is the president. So thank you, Paul, for the introduction, and it's great to be with you this morning. Now, 17 years ago, when I took over the reins for the Mandino group, the very first thing we looked for was measurement. It's hard to improve something we can't measure. It's a target we can't hit. And we found a really powerful science at the University of Tennessee that allows us to scientifically measure how someone thinks. And we've gone through thousands of hours of research, measuring and finding out what those measurements actually mean. And after very powerful versions of the assessment, we are now releasing the latest, greatest, 17 years, 100,000 clients later, Habit Finder. Okay, so why is this important? Why do we want to take on the Habit Finder? Well, let me give you a couple of things to consider. Here we are, hanging on to our clay. This is our life. If you want to, just hold on like this with your hands. This 10-pound block of clay. This is your life. You may be either someone who has been creating and is going, I want to speed up the creation process. Okay, welcome. Here's my clay. I really want to create something more, but I don't know how or what's holding me back. Welcome. Because the Habit Finder allows us to scientifically measure our habits of thinking. We go below the surface of personality and aptitude and tendencies and preferences to find out which habits of thinking are supporting or sabotaging our life. Well, here we are holding on to our clay, and the question is, what is it about this clay that we don't like? Something we would like to change, we'd like to make more of perhaps. What do we wish was different? What do we hope will change? Do you have it? Just take out a piece of paper and write it down. These are the things I would like to have different with my clay, my life. Then we ask these questions. See if you can be with me for a moment. Number one, what am I doing deep inside me that is contributing to either the speed of creation or the clarity in creating? What am I doing? Do I know? If I do, why? The habit finder answers it. If I don't know, the habit finder answers it. That's a critical thing to know. 2, if I know what to do and I'm not doing it, why am I not doing it? Habit finder answers the question. Next, do I need to involve people in this process so that I can create? Would that serve me? Do I know how to take down walls of resistance? Do I know how to unleash energy and cooperation? On the other hand, will I get what I want by helping other people get what they want? Do I know how to help them identify their clay and what they would like to change, and then how to inspire them to do likewise? The habit finder answers those questions. So it really starts with, am I okay? Satisfied? Okay? Or am I where Og says, today, right now, this Friday, I begin a new life. Today I'm going to shed my old skin, my old habits, which have too long suffered the bruises of failure and the wounds of mediocrity. Today I am born anew, and my birthplace is a vineyard where there's fruit for all. That's what Og's been trying to say to us. What are our habits doing? He said, sometimes we surrender our free will to these habits. And our past actions, because of them, have threatened to imprison our future. Our habits impact every facet of our lives. Our emotional state, the decisions we make, the actions we take, the results we're creating. We want to look here, because when we finally go below the surface and look here, we're going to find the answers to the most plaguing questions. And when we radically shift those thoughts, we're going to be astonished at the rapid transformation it will affect in the circumstances of our lives. We're not going to focus on shifting the circumstances. We're going to focus on how we're showing up in those circumstances, which is directly impacting our current result. That's why Habit Finder. That's why, because we can finally get to the real stuff. This isn't a warm and fuzzy blanket. This is saying, here's my clay. I choose me. And as we go through these measurements and you find out, are these habits supporting or sabotaging me? I'm going to choose them, because now I can begin the incremental process of shifting them. I now will know where to focus my time, my energy, and even my resources to move the needle, to create and celebrate, get inspired ideas, ignite my passion, create and celebrate. This is the fastest way to the creation of your dreams. So let's dive into the Habit Finder with these questions. Oh my goodness, what am I doing to contribute? Why am I not taking action? How am I relating to people and connecting with people? And see if we can today help you start to identify some of these habits so you can begin the process of mastering them and maximizing your life. So Paul, let's go to the Habit Finder report. And let's scroll down just a little bit to this first graph, just a little bit more. Bring it down a little bit more. You'll notice a bar. The bar has a section in the middle that's green. I call this your green hood. This is the real you. When you step back from habits of thinking and you take control of your life, you're in your green hood. This particular measurement is about being self-directed, doing what you do because you want to, get to, choose to. That's the habit, being self-directed. It's a habit we're going to absolutely want to embrace. Now you'll notice that the bar in this case went to the left. This is a habit, and it's measuring how potentially risky this habit can be. If it's over just a little bit, it's yellow. If it's further over, it's orange. If it's further over, it's red. oh my goodness, what's the possibility that I might actually listen to that habit, surrender my free will to it, and let it run my day? And if I do, have I threatened to imprison my future? A very good chance. Other option is it can go over here to fear of failure. The topic is always on the left. In this case, we're measuring my primary source of motivation. When I wake up in the morning, where am I? So we'll identify what we're measuring, what is the habit, and do you have a habit, the habit we want to master? Then what is the habit of thinking? And is it supporting you? Or is it sabotaging you? So let's go to the first section. This section is called My Dreams. And by the way, if you have a question while we're going through this, there's a Q&A button on the webinar, and there is a remarks section on Facebook Live. Just type it in. Paul is monitoring those questions so that we can address them as we go through. So here we go. First set of thought processes. These are related to what we call my dreams. My dreams. How are my habits of thinking supporting me in identifying and executing on what's required to create my dreams? Now, you'll notice that in this particular assessment, this is just a random assessment. You want to look at your measurement. But I chose one that's got some common measurements. And this first one, self-directed, is common to go left. Now, your green hood, I want you to hear the green hood in this one. I act on my own moral authority, doing the next right thing for the right reason, because I want to, I get to, I choose to. Can you imagine bringing that motivation to the creation of your dreams? Now, this particular person has a habit of thinking, and it's pretty risky. It's way over to red, that wants them to surrender their free will to a belief that everything is an obligation. A have to, a should, a must, a need to, even a fear of consequences if I don't do it. Can you feel this? It's like putting on a backpack full of rocks and trudging through the day. Can you feel how exhausted that feels? I have to, I need to, I should, I must. Those fear of consequences if I don't. And what impact is that having on my focus and my energy to take the steps necessary to create the next millimeter in my dream? If you have that one, you're going to want to learn how to change this habit, replace it with this green hood. I want to, I get to, I choose to. I will command. And this habit of thinking will obey my command, taking back charge of your life. I won't spend this much time on every measurement, but this is the third most important measurement in the assessment. Next one, excellence. Okay, in my mind, I'm looking at time and talents. Am I focused on doing with excellence? Or do I have a habit of thinking that's going to the left that wants me to be disengaged, discouraged, burned out? Or do I have a habit of thinking that wants me to do it perfectly? That unrelenting, unyielding pursuit of the unachievable, never quite getting there, always living in a little bit of failure, and so overwhelmed by the process that I might actually procrastinate and not do it at all. What would it be like if we brought the thought process of doing it with excellence? Now, the third one is so common. 97% of intentional creators, people who have dreams and want to create them, have a measurement similar to this one in intentional, way to the right. Intentional just says, okay, I vividly visualize. Can I visualize and then execute? Visualize, ignite my passion, and execute. The further this goes to the right, it's like a giant fire hose, fully charged and just knocking stuff over. There is a tremendous risk with the thought process that with very vivid thought processes, this area wants you to engage. I keep going over here because those are your unhealthy habits of thinking over there. They want you to engage in catastrophe. Worst case scenarios, it'll take you down the dungeon of despair and discouragement in 10 minutes. You spend 10 minutes there, you'll be mentally, emotionally impaired for 10 hours. It may want to take you to fantasy. Just so overwhelmed that you just want to escape. It wants you to escape and go to a time when your dreams have been realized, and then imagine what it'll be like after. Having norepinephrine coursing through your body, euphoric feeling, a new mental construct, a new reality. And the instant that life shows up differently, an autonomic response. Cortisol surge. Released to heal wounds. Your body thinks you're being attacked by an enemy. Your vision's being threatened. Your amygdala, your fight or flight center, shuts down your prefrontal cortex, empathy, practical judgment, common sense, rendered emotionally paralyzed. So ask yourself, how often do I find myself in this euphoric emotional high followed, because autonomic means you can't stop it. You go there, you'll go here. An emotional low that's so discouraging and dark and frustrating, and the only way that seems to get out of it is to go back into that euphoric high of fantasy. Oh, go out and learn how to hang on to the end of this massive fire hose and point it in constructive ways. Mental rehearsal, inspiration, problem solving, planning, goal setting. Get inspired ideas, intuitive impressions, creative solutions that will ignite your passion. Actually ignite parts of your brain that are normally dormant in a human being. Drive your action, work without counting the cost or tracking the time. Enormous capacity to do that, but enormous risk to catastrophize and fantasize. You will want to know how to master this thought process if it's one of your habits. Now the next one, and I am spending a little time on this because this kind of sets the foundation for our life. Coachable just says, am I open to new ideas that'll bring value to my life? That's the habit. Am I open to advice? The area we're measuring. In this particular assessment, there's a habit that wants this person to be closed, stuck. It's like an old shoe. I've been doing it so long, I just keep doing it. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. But if it is, it's going to be a little resistant to the shift. So just feel that resistance, because I'm going to show you in a moment in this assessment. If someone's stuck, first question I always ask, I wonder how they're using their visualization. Are they using it intentionally or fantastically? Are they engaging in catastrophe? Because we'll find that out in a minute when we go to the next area of thought process. Next measurement's resilient. We use this word because it represents this mathematical level so clearly. It means to leap back up. Knock down, leap back up. Knock down, leap back up. So many people that we talk to now, this resilient measurement's going into overwhelm. And we hear from business owners, I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. I feel like a duck, calm on the surface and feet paddling 1,000,000 miles an hour just to stay afloat. Or I'm overwhelmed by everything that needs to be done to get to where I want to be, or sometimes back to where I used to be. Wouldn't it be fun to learn how to manage this thought process if you've got a habit of thinking that wants you to go into overwhelm? Identify specific things. Next millimeter, execute, create, celebrate. And lastly, am I steadfast? Am I committed to a direction? This person is. If it goes to the left, I'm not sure I want to commit. It goes to the right, I'm so stuck on it, I'm closed. I'm inflexible. So just look at these measurements and go, wow. Looking at your assessment, what thoughts in this area of my dreams are impacting the way I'm showing up, impacting the actions that I'm taking, impacting my ability to connect with people? Because I created expectations, concrete conditions for happiness that when unmet, leave me frustrated. And let's see how much so with this particular assessment. Paul, let's scroll down to joy in the journey. And anytime there's a question, just raise your hand and let me know. Question on joy. This is your life. This is your tangible life. This is the job that you do, the career path you've chosen, the house you live in, the cars you drive, the furniture in your home. This is all the tangible, measurable, comparable parts of our life. What are our habits of thinking? Are we joyful? Joyful, which means we're not holding our life hostage to expectations. We're actually taking what we have, getting an inspired idea, and then acting and creating, and we're celebrating daily the incremental improvement, the millimeter we created. This person has a habit of thinking that wants them to do this. I want you to join me. Just go. Can you do that? Everybody just do that with me. Go. You feel it? That's the emotion. That's the feeling that comes every time life shows up differently than we expected it. This person's at a high risk of holding tangible reality hostage to an expectation. There's a good chance they're living a lot in their mind, spending a lot of time in their mind, and they don't like the reality of their life. Well, we can fall in love with our life, create, celebrate in the middle of a firestorm. We'll want to do that because joyful, mathematically, is the second most important measurement in the assessment. Yes, that we're experiencing joy. We want to experience gratitude. That means we have an understanding of the remuneration and recognition received for the work that we do. This person has a healthy view. They're in their greenhood. It's not uncommon for creators to have this over to the right, impatient. Tick, 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 tick of linear time is just too slow. I want to speed this up. But you understand, I got bills to pay. I got a mortgage to cover. Got it. But all of that energy is robbing you of taking the actions necessary to create the very thing that will solve the problem. If grateful is over there to the impatient measurement. So just take a look. Purposeful. How am I managing my time? Am I scheduled? Do I know how I'm using it and why I'm using it? Or am I a little frenetic, non-goal directed activity? Like I'm spinning 10 plates, running around like a chicken with my head cut off. Busy, busy, busy. And not really moving anything forward. There's no trophy for busy. There's no recognition for busy. There's only recognition for accomplishment. And that requires that we manage our time. This person has a habit of thinking that wants to try to figure out how to create today what their mind has already created. We can create a Learjet in a nanosecond in our mind. It takes a year. If we have $12 to $15 million to pay today, still take a year. Linear time. We want to make this our primary residence. A couple more measurements. Pragmatic. Standing on this rim of the canyon, I know what the other rim looks like. This person has a healthy understanding of what it takes to get from here to there. They're building the next piece. However, too many have this way over to disillusioned, discouraged by not knowing how to build the next piece. Persistent. We're intangible reality. We are going to run into obstacles. Helen Irwin says the obstacle's the way. We say the very thing we want is right behind the obstacle. So what do? Do we enable it? Do we blame it for our circumstances? Or do we dive into it? Do we take it on? Do we learn from it and move forward? This person has a thought process that will support them in doing so. And lastly, fulfilled. Is this ringing my bell? Do I feel a sense of purpose and mission? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing with my life? Far too many have this fulfilled measurement over to empty. Just feel empty. This isn't it. At least not the way I'm doing it. Just a quick coaching thought. Don't make any drastic changes from today, because it may not have as much to do with what you're doing as it has to do with how you're showing up in what you're doing. We got that? So we now know how we're doing with our dreams, how we're feeling about our tangible reality. Now we're going to go to the deepest, most significant measurements regarding our habits of thinking. It's called myself. These are the thoughts we have with ourselves, about ourselves, about our worth. This is that self-sabotaging internal dialogue you'll often hear me talking about. Oh, and we have a question. Paul, go for it. Just pause for a moment.
Sorry, trying to get myself off mute. Dave asked a great question about join the journey. We've had several others, but they've been some things about being able to print the assessment, which that feature will be up here in the next couple of weeks. And a few other things. The recording will be sent out to everybody on here, as well as this is also on Facebook Live, so you can go like our page and see it when it posts there. But Dave Stroop asked a great question. Could transition in your vocation impact your joy?
Absolutely. There are a couple things that impact joy, and one is a divorce, death of a spouse, moving, transition into employment. Here's the challenge. Did you like what you used to do? Did you like it? Because if you didn't, the risk is that eventually you won't like what you're doing now. That's why I made the comment. It may have less to do with what I'm doing and more to do with how I'm showing up in the doing. So take a look at these measurements and go, wow, am I not experiencing joy? Am I impatient? Because if those thought processes are present, those habits, they're just going to be applied to the next area. So it's not just the transition, it's what I'm bringing to the transition that's critical. Hope that answers the question.
Absolutely. I love what you were saying earlier about it's not just what you're doing. It could very well be how you're showing up. I've worked with many clients, as I know you have, where it's not about whether moving on to something else or what they've moved to was the right decision or not, but diving into the depths of these thinking habits to find out if the reasons for making that decision are going to be carried over in terms of bringing some of this baggage with you, to make sure we don't pollute the next opportunity, no matter how good it is. When we start to understand the impact these thinking habits have, the last thing we want to do is muddy the water of a fresh new pond to play in and be more clear, even though the decision to transition or why you've already transitioned may have very well been the right one. It's not a matter of right or wrong. It's the reasons we're bringing with those things. I love that point.
Now, there's also a couple of others, because we're going into self-esteem. We may transition to a new place, and what's our dialogue about our worth and worthiness? What's our dialogue about our ability, our character, our contribution? Are we going to bring to that new task some dialogue, self-sabotaging internal dialogue that may make it really uncomfortable to learn something new? So let's go into self-esteem, David, and see if we can find the answer to that question. Another question?
Yeah, one more question on joy in the journey, and this is a great one. Lori asks, what if you like what you're doing, but you scored empty and fulfilled?
That's interesting. And I thought it was interesting the word was, I like what I'm doing. The question I would have you explore is, do I feel in the fibers of my being that I'm meant to be doing something really significant? Then I would take a look at what you're doing and see if it answers those significant pieces. Says, I'm fulfilled. Is it ringing that bell, that deep visceral bell of saying, this is my purpose. This is my purpose. And see if you can translate that transition, that I like it, to this is substantive and meaningful. That's what I would say. Okay, Paul went off mute. I was hoping you would add to that, Paul.
Oh, I'm not really a whole lot to add to. I thought that was fantastic. It's interesting. We were just talking about the transition of not necessarily whether what you're going to is the right thing or not, whether you love it, but really being clear about the reasons why you left what you did. Some of those reasons, some of those underlying pieces can sabotage doing something you love. Because if you look at fulfilled, you listen to some of the common dialogue when you click on that bar and read the common dialogue that comes with this risk when it's moving to the left, is feeling like you were born for so much more. Now, that could very well be born for so much more within what you're currently doing that you love. It's just not meeting your expectations, or it's not fulfilling you intrinsically for whatever reason. Now, we always want to feel like we were born for more, but the risk is when it's getting this strong, it can have us eventually start questioning, Lori, what we love to do, what we like to do. It can lose some of its savor if our expectations are so far ahead of what's actually showing up in our influence, and we'll miss some of the fundamentals for creating within the vocation that we love on its way. And she followed up with, could it be a self-esteem issue? Maybe you love what you do, but you feel like an imposter. Perfect segue into where we're headed right now.
Absolutely. And let's go into that. But Lori, add to this, I can be fulfilled, but not really like what I'm doing, because in the joyful measurement, it's not showing up the way I've expected it. So we want to go to expectation, because the number one challenge for self-esteem issues is unmet expectation. I've created an expectation. I'm not experiencing joy. I like what I'm doing, but I'm not experiencing joy. And then I go to self-esteem, and all of a sudden I'm beating myself up. I can almost touch it. I can almost taste it. Why can't I have it? What's wrong with me? And even, does God not love me? It can be really serious dialogue. So let's go to that dialogue and explore it. Thanks, Laurie. Great question. So we go to self-esteem. The most important measurement in the assessment, the entire assessment, is unconditional and forgiving. They have the same mathematical value. One of them is, can I see my own uniqueness and pricelessness? That's unconditional. Forgiving, can I forgive myself for past mistakes, learn from them, and move forward? If these two measurements are balanced, you can build an entire life on those two measurements. Those two measurements have more mathematical value than the other 16 we've looked at. Just those two. Now, conversely, if unconditional, as in this case, has a habit of thinking that wants us to put conditions on our worth, oh my goodness, what happens if we're falling short of those conditions? Then we're not valuable. Can you hear the dialogue? I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not enough. And what's the likelihood that dialogue will either rob us from getting intuitive ideas about people, because we're going to go to that next, or could actually talk us out of intuitive ideas. And if we need people to be involved to get to create our dreams, we could be robbing ourselves and everyone else. See, healthy self-esteem isn't about being arrogant. It's about being real and genuine and authentic. Real, being able to have relationships, get inspired ideas, act on them. It has to do with being genuine, root word genius, your genius, bringing all of your genius to the service of another person. That's being genuine. And sometimes we have all these wet blankets of questions about our worth and our worthiness. They're just smothering our genius. And we are robbing ourselves and others of that genius. So to be genuine, to be authentic, anthoseptic, to be our true self, that means to be in our greenhood, to be in control of our life. That's the objective, without a need to impress or pretend or feel ashamed or fear. Dr. Hartman had created the math for this assessment, said, that's the most difficult task in our mortal existence. He also said it's the highest level of maturity. Isn't that interesting? The highest level of maturity is to be real and genuine and authentic. So let's go back to this first measurement, because this measurement simply asking, Can you see your pricelessness? Or do you have a habit of thinking that wants to put a condition on it? Step into your greenhood. I wrote an entire book on this topic called The Observer's Chair, The Miracle of Healing Self-Esteem. What can you do to start changing this habit of thinking so that it's no longer conditional? Confident. Here I am, my physicality, my skill set, my income, my bank account, equity and properties, my net worth, all those pieces are on the line here. Just a little bit, just a little yellow on this one, but just a little bit. Occasionally this habit of thinking wants this person to compare where they are with other people. One of two things. Well, at least I'm not like that. Or, oh, I just feel less than because I'm not like that. I emphasize this one because far too often this confident measurement is way over in comparison. We live in comparative reality. And that dialogue robs us, well, creates a straw bridge. You can't put weight on a straw bridge, it'll collapse. It creates a straw bridge between us and other people. We can't connect because we're not available for them. Yes, Paul.
So Tammy asks a really powerful and albeit loaded question.
Okay.
And this might be something that we can come back to after we get through the rest of the piece, but I wanted to make sure at least there was a little bit that you had an opportunity to respond to. She said, what if others are making comments to make you feel less and you live with that person? So the comments need to be constantly corrected or restructured in our own minds.
The first thing I want to do is cry. I'm sorry. I'm writing a book called Adore Me, The Secrets to a Healthy Partnership. Oh, you guys that are watching this today, if you have a committed companion, do everything in your power to lift and build, encourage, always looking for the good. They'll actually want to be better. It inspires people. When we're constantly that little innuendo, that little jab, we're robbing ourselves from commitment and trust, and especially intimacy. I may not be able to address this issue. I would say go back to Joy in the Journey and take a look. How is this impacting your joy? It's very difficult in a committed companionship to own your genius, to embrace your true self, to be comfortable with you when there's a constant challenge. Maybe you should call Nikki and have her schedule a assessment debrief with your husband so we could have that kind of a conversation. Because some guys, frankly, don't get it. They don't know it. That's why the book Adore Me, they don't get it. It's like foreign to them. Forgive us. If it's happening out of ignorance, let's help him learn. If it's happening out of being deliberate, you may have some bigger questions to ask. Anything you want to add, Paul?
The only thing I would add to that, and it's on a really high level, admittedly, is that I get a lot of clients that have major challenges with, in what the words they use is caring too much about what other people think. And obviously that gets turned up exponentially in an intimate relationship. And it's interesting to me because they ask me, how do I not care so much about what other people think, especially when it's a spouse? And unfortunately, to shut that grid off, you would shut down so many other wonderful gifts in this area and the next area we're about to go into that are not worth doing that. But the very high level practice, and this is much easier said than done. There's a reason why our clients are working with us on and on to be able to develop the habits that will support this high level. But that is, the answer is actually to care more about what they say because of the insights it provides you about them. That is a very high level practice and very difficult to do. But rather than Tammy spending so much energy trying to restructure what he might be saying being true about you or not, try focusing more on what he is saying because of what it will tell you about some pain he might be in or compensation he's creating. Not so that you can condescend to him or coddle him or patronize him, but to allow your heart to be filled with agape love, one of the core principles we teach, which is a heightened level of awareness, so we can understand one of the most difficult things in practice, and that is that what he's likely reminding you of or saying has more to do with the noise he's dealing with and less to do with you. And that's not an ignorant position. It's actually one of the highest and most difficult things to do when loving and seeing clearly another person.
Paul, that's so wise. And thank you for sharing that with Tammy. It's a lot easier if we're not this close to someone, because we could be out in the world and get that kind of a response. And when I get that kind of response, I want to give the person a hug because I know they must have some really torturous thought processes in their mind to be so lacking in empathy, to be so crude or rude in their commenting. If we can get to a point where we can see that they're just filtering through their own dialogue. And as you said so wisely, Paul, it's revealing the dialogue for them. A good friend once said to me, we'd be less concerned about what people think about us if we knew how little they actually do. And when they do comment, they're commenting through their own filter. Now you get closer, Tammy, this sounds really scary, but you might take a look and say, is there any validity in what's being said? That could serve you. If there is, and you can make those shifts. If it's someone just, it's not the best way for someone to grow. But just know, as Paul said so wisely, just filtering through his own issues. And they could be total ignorance, just total oblivion. That's why I adore me. Thank you, Paul. Great comments.
And the last thing, just really quick before we jump back in, is Tammy, I saw your other comments coming through. This could be an entire webinar itself. In fact, it will be one of the upcoming webinars, especially during such a time in the holiday season, coming to the end of the year where we're taking inventory of our lives. One of the top things on that list for a lot of people, massively successful or struggling, is their relationship, and really coming a lot clearer about what is, what isn't, what's working, what's not. And so we'll be having a webinar here coming in the near future about this very topic, because that agape love, Tammy, that you sent through got me a little emotional. Working very hard on agape love is what you said. And I can only imagine what that means. We'll have an opportunity in that webinar to talk about something that I love that my dad emphasizes so often, and that is that agape love is not the warm, fuzzy blanket. It is clarity. And that clarity isn't always going to be lacking in conflict and in terms of addressing what the reality of the relationship is. But that's a very high level negotiation and something we'll want to address in that webinar.
And I'm just reflecting, Paul, we've had 165 couples come up to the cabin to take on their marriages, and another 100 or so come independently to do so. This is a really tender topic to us. So follow up after this with us and see what we can do to serve you, because this is at the core of our society. It's unraveling in this area. And to have a relationship where a husband and wife are loving and supporting one another, incredible way to live. Lots of other things can be going wrong. If that's going right, we can get through it. Okay, let's jump back into these measurements, because there's just a couple. Some of them are common. This Valiant measurement isn't always common, except for when it shows up. What we know is this person has a habit of thinking that wants them to be outspoken, to share their opinion. They might be sitting in a class and they just can't help raise their hand and share. The primary cause, in this case, the dialogue they have with themselves about their own worth. They get worth out of speaking up, sharing their opinion. It's balancing the negative internal dialogue. Now, peaceful. This is a key piece, because the number one cause of challenges in relationships is the need to be right. We'll want to develop a peaceful place. That's peaceful is a habit to have. That means we have an idea. But we can listen to another person's idea. We can even find good in that idea, which will validate the person, bring down their walls, create cooperation. We can have a great time and never give up our idea. We can own it. The challenge is that one of two things generally happen. I have a great idea, and to keep the peace, I yield. Cut off my arm. I yield to keep the peace. Or two, I become defensive to protect it. It's all about my idea. I'm ready to give it up or protect my idea. And peaceful is all about being so okay that you can entertain other people's ideas without it threatening yours. That's a great, great habit to develop. In this one, engaged, take a look at this, because many of you are going to have this measurement toward the left. Engaged says it's all about boundaries. Can I set appropriate boundaries to protect my health? Get enough sleep, get enough exercise, eat properly? Do I have those boundaries? This person has a habit of thinking over here that wants them to believe that they need to sacrifice their time, their energy, and even their well-being to serve everyone. And in this case, to prove they're okay. To prove they're okay. If you've got this measurement, next time you go to agree to do something, just remember that there are times you're in the middle of things, you're going, how did I get into this? Why did I agree to this? It's a great question. Why? Was it because I was afraid of what they would think of me if I didn't? Or was I focused on protecting me? Because this measurement is about protecting you. Now, if you're just going to protect you and never serve, it's going to go the other way to unavailable. That's as unhealthy. It's a slippery slope. But having this personal boundary and serving as much as you can, being real and genuine and authentic, powerful thing. The risk is that too many are sacrificing their time and energy. Forgiving, I mentioned, I just want to say one thing for anybody that's on the call today or anybody that listens to this after the fact. We occasionally see forgiving drifting to the left, and a person's burdened. It just tells us there's a habit of thinking that wants them to believe they need to hang on to past mistakes, and they become the focus of why they're not creating as fast or able to create. It may be time to take that and go, I'm going to engrave that on my heart. I'm going to learn from that. And I'm going to use the experience I got from that to better serve another person who may be struggling with something similar. There's finally going to be purpose in my suffering, joy in my journey, a much needed healing in my soul. So you can let go of this. Because if there's a burden, and there's a belief that I can't create because of what I've done, it's a huge deterrent to the creation process. Well, Paul, keep watching out for questions. Let's rotate up to people, down to people. Because now we're going to shift from the dialogue we have with ourselves about our dreams, how we feel about our life, how we feel about ourselves, to what's the dialogue we're having with ourselves about people. That's outside of us. What's the dialogue? Now, most of you are going to have a lot of clarity in this area. This assessment is organized in a specific purpose. Expectation can impact my joy and impact my worth. The dialogue I'm having with myself can rob me of this gift. How many of you might just put a comment in Facebook, say, on a scale of 1 to 10, where am I? Am I a 9 in this area? Am I an 8.8 in this area? Am I an 8.5? Just put a comment in the Q&A section and go to Facebook Live if you're on and put a comment. Just tell us where you are. Because it's so exciting to see how many people have this gift. Because if you can shut off the noise internally, this is what you access. This is waiting for you. Now, you may have a couple of these out of measurement, out of balance, like one of these. But the first measurement's empathetic. This is the most important measurement in dealing with things outside of ourselves. EM, stand on. Can we stand on someone's path, look through their eyes, and see what's happening? If this measurement's drifting to the left, he just says, I'm just being a little cautious, a little reserved. I might be struggling with a little people fatigue. It'll be fun to look at. Get rid of that habit. Get back to being empathetic, observant. In terms of physical, the skill set, the resume I read, their talents, how they look, their education, the money they might have. Can I see those things in proper balance? And does it add value to the person? This person has a habit of thinking and observant that wants them too over-focused on outward appearance. So imagine this. I'm looking at this outward appearance. One or both of these is happening. One, if I've got a pretty healthy self-esteem, I'm probably setting expectations for their performance based on how they look. And if you've ever done that, how often are you disappointed by what actually shows up? That's one risk. The other one, if I've got a lot of dialogue going on in my head about I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not worthy, what's the likelihood that this person who looks so put together might intimidate me just a little bit? Either one of those will absolutely directly impact your ability to create your dreams. And I emphasize this because 92% of the time that someone wants to create more and just wants to do it faster or wants to learn how to do it the first place has this measurement way over here where it is, right where it is, over here in orange, where I'm making all kinds of presumptions about them based on their appearance. Most important thing I may say to you today, nothing is as it appears. Nothing is as it appears. We live in a time when we are doing facade management. I borrow that from Paul. I remember when he said it. We're walking around in a facade trying to posture this as the truth of our lives when we've got a dialogue going on inside our head about the challenges, frustrations, overwhelm that we're experiencing. This can be so exhausting. We don't have energy to actually show up and do the work at that level. So if we create an expectation, we'll probably be disappointed. If we create a presumption that they're more than they are, if we spend a little time with them, we find out they're just like us. Oh my goodness, why was I uncomfortable? Why couldn't I just step into their world and connect with them? Great question. You want to learn how to intrinsically validate so you're not stuck on this measurement. Supportive just says, okay, do I have habits of thinking that can help me accurately assess a person's belief systems? Tolerant. Do I have habits of thinking that can help me accurately assess habits of thinking that might be potentially harmful? Now, some of you might have tolerant drifting to the left. You like to save underdogs. Your habits of thinking don't want you to focus on the risks of serving them. And sometimes we serve people more than they want to be served. And when we can't do it anymore, and we stop, we're the bad guy. We're the bad guy. This isn't about compassion. This is about doing something without accurately assessing the risk. Candid. Now, it's not in this one, but 92% of the time, and those wanting to create, this measurement drifts to the right. They're non-confrontational. Oh my goodness. There's enough stress going on today. I can't create more stress, so we have this gunny sack. Somebody creates an infraction. They don't perform properly, say something that's inappropriate. We throw it in the gunny sack. Excellent. Gunny sack, gunny sack, gunny sack, gunny sack, until the gunny sack's full. We either run away or we dump it. The person says to us, why are you so emotional? All I did was, because we've given tacit approval to all the other infractions. If your measurement's over there to non-confrontational, you go on to learn how to practice carefrontation. And lastly, compassion. Passion means a willingness to suffer for something I love. Compassion, suffer with someone I love. It's just asking, can we see somebody else's pain? If this measurement's drifting to the left, it's not saying you're not compassionate. It's just saying, for an example, to another person, you got a blister on your toe. I've got a broken ankle. Could you get over the blister? And the truth is, the compassion has nothing to do with our broken ankle. It's just asking, can we see their blister? Can we see the pain that's causing them? And sometimes we can't see somebody else's pain unless it's more significant than what we're experiencing. It's not a lack of compassion. It's just evidence there's stuff going on that's getting in the way. Shut off the noise, bring compassion into alignment. These are such important measurements. Empathy and compassion, those two measurements have more value than the other 16 measurements, 4 of which we've looked at here, and we'll see the other 12 in a moment, have more value than all of those combined. Being able to step into a person's world and see through their eyes and being able to feel their pain. Okay, Paul, any questions? Are we ready to move on? Okay, let's move on. Just have a couple more and we'll be done. We're almost there. This one is about common sense, practical judgment, everything that impacts me completing tasks. Now I'm smiling because some of you are going to go, wow, I'm pretty clear here. Yeah. And when you procrastinate and you finally jump in and do it, what do you always say? Why did I wait so long? Wow, that wasn't so hard. We want to use the word wow. Wow, why did I wait so long? Wow, that wasn't so hard. Why? Because you shut off all of that other noise and you showed up in your genius. What's the message? Delay, delay, jump in, surprise. Delay, delay, jump in, surprise. Stop being surprised. It's just waiting for you. It's waiting for you. As long as the noise is shut off. Now there's a little bit of noise here. Passion, a willingness to suffer, supports. Now this is an interesting place. I want to emphasize this. You might be agreeing and you say, well, I'm having trouble doing stuff. It's not because of a lack of ability. It's not because of a lack of clarity and a habit of thinking. It's the noise. You shut off the noise, we access. This person will access their passion. Conscientious? Yeah, this is what to do, how to do it. There's just a little bit of impatience. Do I have to do everything myself to get this done right? Can you imagine what I could accomplish if I didn't have to involve people? Can you feel just a little bit of that? Then in organized, this person has a habit of thinking that wants them to be a little bit more spontaneous, a little less structured. Probably works for them, may not work if they're leading people. And some of you might have organized over the other direction, a habit of thinking that wants you to believe there's just one way to do everything and everybody needs to do it that way. Right, wrong, win, lose, life, death, all, nothing. We get to be right, they get to be wrong, we get to crush their self-esteem. Let's go to compliant. Most entrepreneurial independent thinkers are actually going the other direction, willful. You can't do it that way. We respond, just watch me, just watch me. That's willful. The question is, how do we feel about the rules that might get in the way of us doing something a certain way? Can we be compliant? Can we follow the rules that make sense? This person's got a habit of thinking that wants them to be a little bit more submissive. Is it an employer, partner, companion? Who are they surrendering their clarity to? This thought process wants them to believe they have to do that to keep the peace, to not cause problems. Proactive? Do you take on challenges when they occur, jump into them, make them happen? Or are we going to go to the left and have a habit of thinking that wants us to procrastinate? We might. Guess what happens every time we do and we finally jump in? Wow, wasn't so hard. Or wants us to overstate the problem, just get all lathered up because there was a misspelling in the brochure and it's going to ruin everything. Can we just say, okay, we need to correct the misspelling? What is it going to take? We focus on correcting, completing, finishing. And lastly, guardian. Will we protect what we build? It's not uncommon to pour lots of energy into something, get tired, and let it slip just a little bit. this person has a measurement that's going a little bit toward neglectful, that habit of thinking. They forget the price that was paid. We'll always want to be conscious of the price that was paid to get it here and continue what we call washing the windows and taking out the trash. Okay, no question. Let's go to the last piece because this is the most fun for creators. Paul, if you could scroll down, there we go, to structure. We call these first three measurements as they're showing up as the entrepreneurial set. In terms of discipline, those who are creators generally don't like following rules that double negative, that don't make sense. They're creative. They're thinking outside the box. You just want to make sure that habit of thinking doesn't have you just resisting structure, period, even structure that would be of value to you. Respectful is all about authority. How about the person who's imposing the structure? Can we see the value? This person has a habit of thinking that's saying, I don't like following stupid people. Have some fun with this. Have you ever been employed and had a manager who didn't know what they're doing? This person's probably biting their tongue till it bleeds. If it goes to red, they probably have been fired a time or two. See, independent people don't value title. They value contribution and competency. Just be careful that we're not too judgmental, especially in a pragmatic place where the person's responsible for cutting the check. Just be careful how we honor. And analytical, constantly obsessively thinking. This is a gift, so long as we manage it. This is the other fire hose. Remember that one intentional about vivid visualization, going into fantasy catastrophe? This one's going to get really attached to its ideas, and the shadow side is I need to be right, and I'll probably crush people. Or I'll give them an assignment, they'll come back to report, and I'll be able to identify immediately everything they haven't covered. Well, did you think about this? Did you think about that? It's like, I haven't even been looking at this. This has been your job. What's wrong with you? And the person's going, oh, I'm such an idiot. I should have thought about that. And we're crushing self-esteem. Greatest risk, crushing someone else's self-esteem. Greatest gift, coming up with really creative ideas. Solutions to challenges. Oh my goodness, effortless. You don't have to turn this on to wake you up in the morning, wake you up in the middle of the night. You'll be thinking when you're going to sleep at night. That can be bothersome. So you want to have some very specific things you do to channel it or even quiet it at times. Because it's like riding a wild horse in the plains. You know, you're on the saddle, directing it left and right, or your foot is stuck in the stirrup and it's dragging you through the ground. You want to stay in the stirrup. Stay in the saddle, excuse me. Just a couple more. Methodical is just asking, how open am I to ideas? Consistent saying, okay, how do my habits of thinking support me in setting a schedule and sticking to it? This person's got a habit that's got a sign tapped to his door that says, interruptions welcome. Please, anything. Give me a good reason. Something valuable that can help me justify not having to do this right now. Can you hear it? Oh, I'm going to postpone this till Tuesday. And I can do that. And then we go the next day, and pretty soon Tuesday's here. And again, we're looking for a reason to delay it to Friday to see how this is happening. If your measurements left like this, and then vigilant. How do we feel about the rules in terms of enforcing them? Are we more strict, more lenient? What do our habits of thinking want us to be? And can we get in our green hood, recognize the value, implement appropriately? Well, in summary, remember where we started? I have this clay. I want to do more with this clay. What do I wish was different? What would I hope will change? Well, now we have some idea of the habits of thinking that might be impacting us, knowing what's happening. And if we know, doing it, taking the action, connecting with the people. Because here's the promise. You take this clay and you say, I choose me. These are my habits. I'm not my habits. These are just my habits. And now I'm going to focus my time, my energy, and my resources to shift these habits. Because the promise is this: when these habits begin to shift, you will be astonished at the rapid transformation it will affect in the circumstances of your life. Want this to change? Focus here. Change these, and this will. Paul, back to you.
All right. That was awesome. So great opportunity to be with us on time. We're 6 minutes over what we had originally scheduled. So in terms of reviewing the habit finder itself, going over every measurement, we got there within a couple of minutes. We've probably got maybe 5, maybe 10 minutes at the most before both Dave and I need to be prepared for our next appointments. So any questions from that, we'll stay on Facebook Live for any questions that come through Facebook, and also be watching for any questions that come through the Q&A for those of you who are logged into the webinar on Zoom. So either way, we'll watch for anything that comes through. And Tammy had mentioned thank you several times earlier as we were addressing some of that, and just said celebrating shifting habits now to get the patients to wait for more instruction. So in terms of taking all of this in, I mean, Dad, it's a lot of information. And I know there might be some people just jumping on right now listening to this. Why are they going to want to go back through and watch this? Why are they going to want to take the time to go through a habit finder profile? For the person who may just be jumping on going, so what? What would you say to that person?
Well, the truth of the matter is you should probably be a little overwhelmed. Because when we're working as coaches, we're not working in all of these 6 areas at one time. We're working on one area at a time. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, that's a normal feeling. And then there's also that, but I need to get this going. Yes. And do you have a habit of thinking that's created that kind of impatience, and how does that work for you? Would it be wise to step back and take just one of these areas and work on it? I would say for most of you, it's probably in my dreams in terms of expectation creation. What would happen if I chose to live in the now and only went into my mind for inspired ideas? I acted on them and I created. For some of you might say, I don't know where to start. Well, on your habit finder, there's a button. You can click and talk to one of our consultants and explore possibilities. We've got all kinds of things that you can do, and at every price range, depending on where you are economically and what you want to create. There's all kinds of options. Let us serve you. Our mission is your success. And now you know the habits that are in the way, the strengths that you want to maximize, the unhealthy ones you're going to want to change, replace, and some of those fire hoses, you're going to want to walk out on the end and manage them and point them in great directions. If you need some help with that, we'd love to assist you. You can go online and the Mandino group, augmandino.com, you get some books. We've got books on self-esteem. We've got Today I Begin a New Life on stepping into someone's world and using your mind constructively and living present in the now. And the Observer's Chair, Healing Self-Esteem, Equanimity, Conquering Mount Entrepreneur, Walking Up the Mountain. And we talk about some of these measurements. Matter of fact, you bring your assessment with you on the journey. And we talk about those measurements in the book. So I would say, be overwhelmed. That's understandable. Now just take one piece at a time. And if you need some assistance, let us serve you.
Fantastic. A lot of thank yous, and we love you. You're so welcome. Coming right back to all of you. Apologize, continue glancing down. We've got people sending those through as we speak, and some great comments coming through there, and several people on a Facebook Live version of this webinar that have been able to join us today that wouldn't have been able to otherwise. So, Dad, thank you so much for your time. I know what our calendars have looked like today and leading up to this point this week, but this was, I'm sure we can both agree, incredibly worthwhile, and look forward to being back again sooner than later as we continue to add value and serve wherever you are and then hopefully eventually being able to provide enough value that some of the more focused solutions that we have to provide could bless your life. So love you all. Thank you, Dad. Great opportunity to be on here with you as my business partner and as my father. And everyone have a great weekend. Take this in one piece at a time. And when you're ready to take it deeper, when you're ready to take it into your specific measurements, we stand by ready to serve. Everybody have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.